The Gringo Go Home group that attacked us is a terrorist group.
Yeah, mic drop. I thought he was going to say something else. Hi, I'm Jade,
And I'm Johan Say,
and welcome to our channel,
Get Into the Black.
where we share with you our experience living here in Puerto Rico. In today's video, as you can see by the title, is going to be a story time about that time we were doxxed by Gringo Go Home.
This so called movement has been really it was surprising when we got here and we start seeing all the tagging and different things about it. And then when we start getting attacked by this movement and by some of the members, and realizing the majority of these people don't actually live in Puerto Rico. They're getting their information from social media. They live in the mainland, and they're trying to support a cause that they don't. I don't think they really understand what the core of it, or if it has an actual core understanding.
Yeah, I mean, I think the people definitely have a grievance, and it's
100%. Yeah.
I get it. But I think the way they just go about it is borderlining on xenophobia because they kind of lump everyone into the same bucket, and I think that's kind of the motivating factor about showcasing or giving this video today, because we want to make sure that as most of our subscribers who are coming in and looking to either visit or live in Puerto Rico, most of them are people of color or black, and we want to make sure that they know that when people are saying Gringo Go Home, they're talking about you too. They do not care if you are American and you're buying a home. They don't care what you've been through, what you've experienced in the past. To them, you still the enemy. They will still acknowledge that in the US there is racism against black people. They know that. But then when it comes to the context of this situation, they ignore all of that. And you're just as privileged as those white people that were oppressing you.
Yeah. This reminded me of my first time going to going to Europe, and I was going to London, and I wrote on my card black, and they were like, "What?" And I put African American for this is the nationality, excuse me. And someone at the gate said, "You're American," and that was a very eye opening. And coming here to Puerto Rico is where that I was reminded of how much my nationality and what my culture is and how different they are.
Yes, yes. And interesting though too, Puerto Ricans are Americans. Like if we
Yes.
want to be really technical, they are Americans too. But in the context of this situation, the people who are part of Gringo Go Home identify as nationalists. So they want Puerto Rico to be its own independent country, which if we're going to talk about the history of Puerto Rico, it has never been its own independent country. For those who are coming to move here, we want to make sure that you know who these people were, who were the people who did the doxing. And we want you to know we're not going to give their last names, but we are going to say their first names. And we think it's important that you know this because we want you to be aware if you come into contact with these people, because especially as a person of color, they are integrated kind of in our system. Because as we know, the U.S., these people too, who we're talking about, they're from New York, they're Nuyorican, which is Puerto Ricans from New York. They most of them will identify as black, so that means they're in close proximity to us, and that's kind of how I got into contact with them. And I think this is important too for the people who are also in the Gringo Go Home community and group, that you know that there's also people in your group who is utilizing your outrage and your trauma and the things that you're experiencing for to do their dirty work. Because what ended up happening had nothing to do really about a Gringo Go Home situation. It was just me and a girl got into an argument. And that was the catalyst of this whole thing.
When I lived in New York, when I visit New York, the mixture of socioeconomic class is so diverse and not at the same time. When I lived in New York, I lived in Washington Heights, so it was Dominicans, and I was brought into one of them. I used to laugh because they called me JoJo, and I was like, why? And I finally asked, like, why are you calling me JoJo? And I was like, my name is Yo Yo, and they're like, JoJo.
Jojo.
And I was like, oh, then I thought about Spanish. It was like, okay, the Y is pronounced J. Yeah. So, and then coming here, expected to be more welcome because in the States, we're all kind of one. And again, we're from LA, so from the West Coast, there's not a lot of Puerto Ricans or Dominicans there. And I thought we were going to be accepted as one, that we were, we click up in the mainland. Yeah. I thought we was clicking up here and we was all part of this one thing. So when the Gringo Go Home movement started moving closer to us and started attacking us online, I was really offended and I kind of shut it down where I didn't want us to really talk too much about it because it got very serious and threats and things like that and harassment. It was just plain harassment. And I say this confidently is I am more on your side than not. And that's why I felt really hurt about their action of these individuals because I reached out to one of them. And this is where we start, Jade is going to take over. But I reached out to one of them because I read their stories and I was like, well, it touched me because my family is Caribbean. And and I believe, especially the area where Tainos are, my family probably are Taino, right? And especially looking at our skin tone and color and how we move. So, and learning that the Taino culture were all over this Caribbean portion of the islands, from Haiti down on to the Lower Antilles, it's just like, yo, this is really discovery for us. So Jade did a great thing. I was having a back and forth conversation. Elliot, yeah. This guy Elliot, and I read his article because someone posted in our group. I went and looked at it. I read the article about him doing genealogy, and I was like, wow. And you focus on the Caribbean. This sounds great. So we were going back and forth in the conversation, and it just got really uncomfortable where I had to say, Jade, read these messages because she can read between the lines on certain things much quicker from a different perspective than I can. And when she read it, you said what?
I was like, oh, he's pandering. But what the interesting part was at the same exact time, and we didn't know this was happening. At the same time, he was communicating with him in the DMs about our genealogy and him possibly helping. I was communicating with him in his comment section because I had thought I had liked something he had said in that article, and it was about how when he sees African Americans or Black Americans, however people want to identify, when he sees us come to Bombay, he opens up and makes sure that we're able to receive and celebrate our ancestors and learn how they dance here in Puerto Rico. And I thought that was amazing because I've had my own connection with Bombay, and I'm like, thank you for allowing other people like myself to be able to experience these moments. And he said some snarky stuff to me, and I was just like, oh. And it made me start reevaluating what it was he was actually saying in that article. Because he was saying things like, oh, Black Americans are so disconnected from their culture. What? And the first time I read it, I just let it fly over my head because I've heard many of people say that. But now, given the other information he has said, I started when I was like, is that how you feel about us, sir? Because what happened to the Puerto Ricans? They just so connected to their African culture because you do bomba. And it's not to belittle it, but we have our dances as well that connect us to our culture, the way we cook some of our soul food dishes. Like I was telling somebody else last, certain words we have in our language. We wear dashikis. There's numerous of things that as African Americans that still connect that we still have retained and held onto, or even had a resurgence or emergence of that. So to say that we're just so disconnected, as if there hasn't been intentional movements to one, disconnect us, but also disconnect you as well. It was kind of like, oh, we're kind of in the same boat, and you're trying to make it seem like, you're different. And I'm wondering where you think you get these differences from.
Absolutely. And I want to say the definition of culture. The noun, the first noun is the art and the other manifestation of human intellectual achievement regarding collectively. The other noun is the customs, art, social institutions, achievements of particular nation, people, and other social group, Caribbean culture. Okay, so I think it's really important. Language is really important, and it's okay to not understand certain words and when you put your own thing on it. But when someone is telling you that that's not what that means, let's look it up and let's be factual so we can understand each other and come to an agreement. I think is really important, and that is not what happened here. So go ahead into your next point.
Yeah, so we're gonna hop on into the story on the what was the presenting issue that caused all of this to like boil over. If you guys been watching our videos for a while, we mentioned when we had our first run-in with them, and it really had nothing to do with us. We were just in a picture. I was in a photo with another woman who's a YouTuber. They were like trying to harass her for whatever reason. I still don't remember why they were trying to harass her, but the photo they used, I was in it. And people were like, that woman's black though, so I don't really know what you're trying to say. So they ended up taking it down because it didn't get the kind of attention and reaction they thought they were going to get from that photo and trying to include us in it. But now, giving what is this, was like a year or so later, I'm in a group chat, and this is our like black, for better words, we're gonna call it the black group chat. So we're in this group chat, and we talk about different topics. And because we are black, the idea of gentrification is really close to us because we've experienced it back home. So this is a topic that constantly gets brought up. Every so many months, somebody starts talking about it. So someone brings it up, which was Ari. So she posted it in the chat. I don't remember what it said exactly, but it was talking about like, if I'm not mistaken, it was talking about Airbnbs. And she posted in the chat. I didn't say anything because I was like, I'm not going to give into it this time. Just don't feel like having this conversation. People started replying, and it created a dialogue because, like I said, a lot of us are empathetic to what's going on. But then she goes, "Well, it's y'all too," and it's like, what? Black people barely own property. Like,
The statistics of how much black wealth has been stolen via property in the United States and all of its colonies is astounding in the trillions of dollars. So the fact that this person who's supposed to be educated on our culture and our history, which she brings up later, to say such a thing lets me know where she stands, and I'm gonna be frank about it that it's racism and it's xenophobia.
So I made my comments to her. We're going back and forth. I'm pretty much explaining to her that like we're different than them. Because most of we don't have the wealth to gentrify you, and that's when we talk about definitions of words. Gentrification is not someone who moves from a place to another place that has a lower cost of living. That's not what gentrification is. That's just migration, immigration, whatever you want to call it, but it's not gentrification. Gentrification is when you have a conglomerate or a very wealthy people and they go into low income communities and they start buying everything up from the people up under them. We are not wealthy. And I say this all the time. I was like, we're not wealthy. I do not have the social or political connections or capital to gentrify you. I just don't have it. I don't have it in America, and I don't have it here. So me just buying a house, because now this is what you're saying. Now you're saying is if you go somewhere and you buy a house, you are a gentrifier. That's
or
not what that is.
or start a business, or if you do anything in a place that's not typically yours, you're gentrified. They lumped all this stuff in together, which was very offensive to me and to a lot of us that are here on the island. So again, let's go into the definition. The process, gentrification, the process whereby the character of a poor urban area is changed by wealthier people moving in, improving housing, and attracting new businesses, typically displacing current inhabitants in the process. Every house I've come close to me buying or purchasing was not a takeover. It was they
Also, not
were
in a low income neighborhood.
we this property is not in a low income area, right? It's a lot of the people have been here for 25 years, 20 years. We're in a local area, which was intentional.
Yeah.
Everything I purchased was from honestly wealthier Puerto
Yeah.
Ricans who were selling, who were all these people either they were older people, they're older people, and their kids do not want the house. Their kids,
Yeah.
family members do not want the house because guess what? They have their own life in the mainland
Usually, yeah.
U.S. and they're like, I don't want to come back to Puerto Rico. Let's like, Dad, you made good investments. It's time. Or Mom, let's go ahead and cash out because that's what you do when you invest. You don't invest and just keep it forever. That is one strategy that can be used for certain situations, but that's not typical for most investments. You buy it for at one point so you can sell at another point.
Yes, and I think it goes into a greater thing that a lot of people like to quote that a lot of Puerto Ricans are on social services or they're poor, and it's like there's a large wealth disparity in Puerto Rico. Not everyone's poor.
No.
So just because someone's going someplace and they're buying something doesn't mean they're taking from a poor person. And two, we didn't cause property values to go up. If anything, we caused it to go down.
We don't buy retail.
Yeah, we're not paying retail prices. We're, if anything, I'll categorize that as an investor because I'm not trying to pay no top dollar. I want a deal.
I don't even buy properties that are completely done. We are looking at one now. That's because we are buying for retail. So you have to be mindful at like the amount I paid for the property is not what drove the value of the rest of the properties around here up. So I don't understand why people miscategorize this.
It's an assumption. They just, which I get it because in their heads, they believe that when you take something, someone else cannot have it. Which, yes, in theory, and that does cause displacement in theory. But the reality is so we can't move around. You come to the US and you come to our communities and we share and section off spaces for you. But if it's in reverse, suddenly we're the problem. Like we met a Puerto Rican recently and he was so happy to see us. And at first I was like, why is this man talking to us?
I was so confused.
And I later realized it's because when he lived in the US, that was his first reality that he or that certain people would see him as black. And it took the black community to tell him they're treating you this way because to them, you are black. And he's like, huh? And once he understood that, he was happy he saw us because I think he just felt community and connected. Like, whoa, you guys are here. Like, I don't see because there's not a lot of Black Americans who are here. So I think he was just surprised to see us and happy to see us because he shared that with us. Like, oh, like you made me feel home there. And again, we talked about that already, that we kind of thought that that would happen here, but instead it became this like crab in a barrel mentality where people think we're trying to take something from them. So back to the story. So So me and Ari, we're going back and forth. Petty, I will admit it, I can be petty sometimes. So me and her are going back and forth, and she basically makes a comment like, "I hope your family lose everything." So then I was like, that is really interesting. So you hope a black person loses their property and their house. We only own one, and you want us to lose that? And I was like, I would think you would want us to own these things so that you can have a place to stay. And I would allow you, and I think this is where I hurt her feelings, because I said, I would allow you to live in my house long term if you were being displaced, but I feel like you're the ops. I can't trust you. Then other people started getting at her, and she turned the conversation into something else because she has other identifiers of her personality, and she felt offended, which no one talked about her sexuality or anything. But she brought that up, got offended, and apparently she had gotten arguments in this chat before. So someone basically said, like, isn't like, don't you always get into these arguments and then you leave the chat and come back? And then so she left. But so that was the first day. So she left. No one's thinking anything of it. The next day, I get this notification from Instagram, and it's like someone tagged you in a post, and I see it says like Gringo Go Home. The that was the Instagram page. And I'm like, oh man. I'm like, what? So then I look, and he hasn't even been added yet. Nothing has been added yet. It's just me at first. But there's a photo of us with our YouTube channel, our Airbnb, and like our personal information on there. And I just see it for a glimpse because then they block me. And I'm like, oh, interesting. So I go into our group chat and I'm like, hey, I think somebody tagged us in something because I saw my tag, but I can't see it. I think they blocked me. So then other people in that group chat, they're like, oh yeah, they did post you guys up here, and they're laughing because Black Americans continue to think a lot of things are comical. So we're laughing and joking about it, and they're like, congratulations for being the first Black woman to show up on Gringo Go Home. And we're like, shut up. Just tell me what it says. So someone takes a photo and they put it in the chat so I can see what the post is saying and what it has and everything. And then that's when I'm like, huh. The video they took a picture of, but it was a screenshot of our YouTube channel of the video. And I noticed that the views were super off because this was one of our videos that was super popular, but the views were really low. And I'm like, huh. And I looked at the timestamp. I said, oh, this video is from 6 months ago, meaning whoever took the screenshot took it 6 months prior. So I said, oh, this is somebody who's been looking at us for a while. I said, interesting.
They've been watching.
Yeah, I was like,
looking.
This is interesting. Because it didn't, the timeline didn't match up from when I showed up with that Gringo Go Home with the other girl, because I was like a year and some months prior. So I was like, no, this one, calculation, counting the timestamps. I'm like, this is 6 months prior. Who did we meet 6 months prior who would do something like this? I'm at this time he's not home. I'm talking to one of my friends on the phone, and I'm like telling her, I was like, I think it was Elliot. I think it was him. And she's like, why do you think it's him? I was like, I don't know. I just have a feeling it was him. And I'm like, I'm gonna wait till Yo gets back home because I'm gonna ask, I'm gonna go look in his conversation with Elliot to see how long ago it was. But I think it's him. So I get off the phone with my friend. I go to Instagram, and there's a video of people dancing bomba, and in the background is Elliot. I said, "Oh, this is the ancestors. This is the ancestors telling me clear as day. It's him." So when Yo comes home, I'm like, "Can I see your chat?" And I was like, "Oh, we did meet him exactly 6 months prior."
The reason why that was so easy to connect, because what made me ask Jay to review the messages is that he came to me and said, well, we before I do any work and stuff, I need to, I want to talk to you about some of your views and things, and I just have some questions, about you and your family and stuff like that. It's like, and that's what made me, I think, originally go. And then once we talked about it, and at the time I was in the middle of renovation, there was a lot going on, so I was like, you know what? I don't really have time to dedicate anyway to doing that, and I don't want you in family history.
Oh yeah, was like we don't like that
I'm not gonna
energy. I don't.
voluntarily give you no information.
You're not about to be looking at my ancestors. I don't know what you got
Right.
going on over there. He said something that was like, I was like, oh no, he said my people been watching you.
Yes.
Look at my face. Your people. Sir, you mean you? I remember when he
That's what it was. That's what it was.
when I read that, I said, yo, people. What people? And that's when I knew. I was like, no, something's off. So fast forward, I'm pretty sure at this moment, that it is him behind this page. And it is him who posted this, because it has to be the person who has the screenshot has to be the one who posted this. So then I start asking people, do Ari and Elliot know each other? Which you'll be surprised how happy people were to give me information about these two. And it's because it's not just us they harass and bully online. This is like their MO.
It was their MO, and that's why, and I'm done with my conversation, is that why we are here, because being well knowledge about who we are and our ancestors. We looked up Puerto Rico. I Jade has degrees in this information on our African American studies, Black studies, and I've lived it and personally read it. This is the MO of how the world treats people of color. Mm-hmm. They're going to bully you and bully you. Like, I have my LA hat today for a reason. I didn't put it on. I don't know why I forgot. But like, when you from LA or from any place in the hood, or if a bully is bullying you, you do not just, oh, I'm not going to say nothing and cower it up. They're going to continue to bully you. They're going to continue to tell your story and have people out here thinking you crazy. And that's something we're like, I'm like, I've decided, and Jade agreed, because I was telling her, like, let's just calm down. So let's see what the environment is. We got too much going on. But we're not going to allow others to tell our story. And that's why this channel is so important to us, that we have to get back to it, because we've had so many people talk about how we have impacted their life on moving here and where to move, how to move, why they get here. And we want to make sure we provide that value to our community, because we didn't have anyone doing this for us. And so when we thought about what value could we add to the world, this is one of those values we feel like we can add to you all.
Yeah, and just talking about that, how people will try to tear Black people down. She was trying to. It was interesting because she was trying to use Malcolm X to like say that we shouldn't own anything. And I said, girl, do you know the politics of Malcolm X? He was all about black ownership and entrepreneurship. Like, that is what the Nation of Islam stands for. That like everything they do is about, from their newspaper, bean pies, they always trying to sell something. They are about black business. And and that was another reason why she got called the ops, because Malcolm X does have a speech where he talked about, if you are someone who's against black businesses and black ownerships, you are a part of the opposition. Mm-hmm. And she didn't like that, because don't come trying to use my ancestor words, my people's words, and try to use it as if, one, I don't know who they are and I don't know what they stood for, but then trying to weaponize it against me so that I don't want to own a house. Like that, it still doesn't quite make any sense to me.
Well, I want to say this. The statement reminded me of when people say, well, black people own slaves too. What?
Yeah.
Like, it's just one of those crazy statements that people make. It's like, you read one part of that and you're talking about this minority group because it fits into your narrative. And I'm personally tired of people putting their narrative on.
And then they don't even tell the whole story about that. Most of the time, what they did was they were owning their family members and giving them freedom.
Yeah.
Like, they don't tell the whole story. They're like, oh, yeah, y'all own slaves too. And it's like, do you know what they were doing though? You're kind of just telling half of it. So, so kind of back to the story, which is almost towards the end. And I want to say too why I say this whole thing is a combination of xenophobia and racism. Because some people will say that's not racism, that's not this, that's not that. And I do believe that it is racism based on how we were treated in this situation. And I say that because yes, they got the smoke for everybody, right? Anybody who comes from the US and you're coming and you're buying property or anything, they got the smoke for you, right? But how they deliver that smoke is very different compared to who you are and your identity. For I had a client who I was helping his social media account. This guy shows up on Bad Bunny. Mm-hmm. And I'm not gonna lie, they say all publicity is good publicity, and I'm like, dude, you need the views. Let's get it. Let's run this up. No one said anything. No one came into his comments. I thought he was deleting stuff. Nope. No one just said anything to this man, and I'm like, that's interesting. There was also another woman, white woman though, and she got a little bit of hate, but it was not much. Johan said he gets a little bit of stuff in his inbox.
I'm too busy for y'all, so I don't see it.
He usually see it like a month later.
Like I respond to stuff 2 months later, and I'm trying to do better, but I'm not because it's stuff like that. I don't have time for those games. Like I just no. Like I'm really from South Central LA. You're not about to tell me like my grandparents are from the dirt of Jamaica. My grandparents are from Louisiana, Texas, dirt. Like you're not about to sit here and come at me and think I'm gonna give two F's about how y'all really feel about me providing opportunities for locals, providing opportunities for myself, being able to take care of my family, being able to be an asset to this community, paying taxes, making sure stuff are cleaned up. I'm not gonna feel bad about that. Yeah, and you can't make me.
And then, but for me, oh my gosh, it's first it's a lecture on you should know this, you should know that.
To know better, you should know better.
You should know better. To I hope you die. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yo, there's no way you can't tell me. It's like when you talk about intersectionality, it's all my identities just came together and reminded me like you a minority and they don't like you in any facet parts of you, from your Americanness to your blackness to you being a woman. They hope you die. Yeah. And I'm like, because I own a house.
Because you own a house, because you're black, because you're not from the mainland of Puerto Rico, you're from mainland America. Because you have a degree and you don't use it the way they want you to use it. Because of it's all these different things when you look at it. Because when people are in a battle, like if we look at the Kendrick Lamar and Drake, right? Yeah. And J. Cole. Drake didn't even say nothing. He's not gonna say nothing because he don't want that smoke. But where we're from, again, which I think is so important, is that when somebody is bullying you and saying things to you, you have two options. You can cower in the back and say nothing, or you can just meet it straight up. Like forget sneak this, right? So like you're not gonna sneak and try to say little things about me, thinking I'm not gonna catch it. And that's just culturally how we roll. So this is us getting up in front of it. Like we have all our friends and people don't say nothing. Yeah. Well, they keep saying something to me. Am I supposed to just look the other way, turn the other cheek?
And not just us, though. It got to the point that they start harassing our friends. Yeah. Like when we block them and everything, our friends are like, who is this? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, they really in your comments, like cussing you out because you visited here? Like, this is wild. So to basically wrap up the story. So that situation happened. I found out it was those two. I just kind of sat on the information. But what I ended up doing was I got the Gringo Go Home page shut down. I started telling. I put it first on my story, which I knew I was like, if I put it on my story, it's going to be enough that it's going to get people to message me, and those are the people I know I can ask for them to report this page. So I started asking people. I just had a little message. I'm like, can you report this page? They doxed me and blah blah blah. And Johan said, can you please like report it? And within 30 minutes, page was shut down. Have not seen that page or anything since then. They will comment from their personal pages.
Personal fake pages. My thing is, uh, the Gringo Go Home group that attacked us is a terrorist group.
Yeah, mic drop. I thought he was going to say something else. But I do think it is. They do seek to instill terror and fear into people. They're like, you're gonna meet these people. They're gonna scare you, and it's like,
and the people who say that, I realized they were the ops too.
Yeah,
they're the ops too. So we don't trust them.
Yeah,
and that's why we've always been good at reading people, and why us together is important, because we can see things from different angles. And when I realized I came to that conclusion is because that definitions are important. Interpreting those definitions is very important. And when I interpret that definition of what a terrorist is and the activities of a certain group, that's it. And I will say this: I don't think the whole Gringo Go Home movement, and because I know people who support some of the ideologies of it, and about, for example,
we support some of it. We understand.
Independence. I think is very important, but I also know what comes along with independence. We have prime examples of what, if you want independence from the United States, what you have to do to get it, and what
or the any of these colonizing countries.
Exactly. What's happening, and what are the consequences that come after that, right? So we're very clear of it, and I think some of them are too, and they're ready for it. But the reality is, I know a lot of Puerto Ricans who are pro statehood and don't want things to change. I mean, don't want to be separated from America, but they want things to change. And we all agree there's a lot of things that needs to change in Puerto Rico, right? There's a lot of things that need to change in mainland America. There's a lot of things that needs to change in this world, and it's going to be us individually to be able to do that work. And we have to work together and not against each other, and not work off limited views that are so hard, stand still, and that you believe extreme, because you are alienating your allies. And anytime you alienate your allies, you weaken your cause and your movement, and this is not the way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, they even call each other sellouts and stuff like that because people want to sell their homes and move on. Like, and I think that's the weirdest conversation. Like, your family left and went to the US and started a whole nother life, and you decided to come here, and now you're telling the people who grew old, who stayed here, built and made sure that this place was maintained. They helped build it up after it has been destroyed. They stayed and they just died. And you're like, oh, you're a sellout because you sold your house. What? And I say that because, as somebody who's actively worked against gentrification, for example, there is a place back home called Leimert Park, and it was getting gentrified. I mean, it still is a constant fight because that area is prime real estate. It's nice. I mean, it's a little ghetto over there, but I think as far as what they're trying to build over there, that's going to be a moneymaker in the future. So it's this battle for the real estate over there. And some of the businesses, they had to be honest with other people who were forming a coalition because they wanted to fight against the gentrification. They're like, before you sell any of your businesses, let us know, because we had to realize that those people needed outs from those businesses. They no longer wanted or could sustain to own those properties, so they needed to sell. Who are we to tell them that you need to take the individual responsibility of maintaining this area and you need to be the financial person who does that? No, if you want to fight against gentrification and the preservation of your culture and customs, that is a collective thing. That is not an individual person's thing. And to call those people sellouts because they died or because they're just ready to move on or they can't sustain this anymore, like that's just so. I'm sorry, my voice getting a little shaky. That's messed up though.
Well, that comes to the end of this video. Thank you guys for your time. Thank you for listening to the story time. This is something that was, as you can tell on our face, is very serious to us. And this wasn't an easy conversation to have, but we felt that it was our duty to you, to us, and to our sons. You guys, I'm sure, saw that video. We're having a baby boy,
Yes,
another one.
another boy.
And we are making sure that we be open and honest the best way we can that provides value to you, because you guys are a tribe. And so you know when you're coming here, the good, the bad, and the in between. So thank you so much for taking this time out. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe.
Oh, one last thing. Don't let nobody call you no Gringo. Don't do that. Don't do that. With that being said.